You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. Founded in 2010, the annual Poetry in Voice competition features students from across the country reciting their favorite poems. And after thousands of readings, 9 finalists in 3 categories compete for nearly $25,000 awarded to the winners and their school libraries. Now, 2 of those finalists are from here in Manitoba, Thierney Dignadice and Al Gilbert. Hello to you both.
Hi.
Oh,
Welcome to Classic 107. I'm so thrilled that you've joined me virtually here. And I really do want to begin with a poem. Al, would you mind reciting for us first?
of course.
What are we going to hear?
So this is Not Horses by Natalie Shapiro.
All right.
Okay. What I adore is not horses. With their modern domestic lifespan of 25 years, what I adore is a bug that lives only one day, especially if it's a terrible day. A day of train derailment or chemical lake or cop admits to cover up. A day when no one thinks of anything else, least of all that bug. I know how it feels, worn as I've been into these rotting times as into sin. Everybody's busy, so distraught they forget to kill me, and even that won't keep me alive. I share my home not with horses, but with a little dog who sees poorly at dusk and menaces stumps, makes her muscle known to every statue. I wish that she could have a single day of language so that I might reassure her. Don't be afraid. Our whole world is dead, and so can do you no harm.
Oh, that was really powerful. Thank you for that, Al. Tell us a little bit about what we just heard.
So yeah, that's Not Horses by Natalie Shapiro. It was written pretty recently in, I don't know, in the past 10 years at least. So it's pretty a recent poem. It's about a woman who is just saying about what she wants in the world and talking about her life and how it's been for her and her little dog.
What drew you to that particular poem by Natalie Shapiro?
What first drew me into that poem is I used to love horses when I was a kid, and a poem that has horses in the name, I was like, oh yeah, I loved horses. So like, why wouldn't I pick this poem to do?
Yeah, it was just that immediate connection. And I mean, you can hear that passion in the voice and the way that you recite that poem. It is really, really captivating. And I mean, that is obviously what has gotten you to where you are now as a finalist in the poetry and voice competition. This is a competition you performed in before, right?
Yes, it is. So I did it last year in person, which is a lot different from now that we're all doing it over Teams and Zoom. Yeah, I didn't make it as far as I did this year, which I don't know, it is what it is. But
Well, how does it feel to be a finalist then?
it feels super, super crazy. Like, I don't know, just doing it last year and not making it as far. And now this year, it feels like I've really like proven myself and I've like really grown a lot as a performer and like a reciter since
Yeah,
last year.
it most certainly is an art, isn't it? Tierney, I want to bring you into the conversation here. How did you get involved with poetry and voice?
I actually found out about the website and the competition in 9th grade because I had a poetry class in junior high, and we used like the poetry and voice website a lot because it's like a Canadian-based site, and it was just easily accessible for everyone in the class. So, they advertise the competition on there as they should. And then when I got into grade 10 last year, my school entered the team regional competition. So I entered that with 2 other students, and we actually placed 3rd in the competition last year. So that was super cool. And then I found out that we were still entering it this year, but individually and virtually because pandemic. So I thought like might as well go for it. And I did. And now we're here.
So you're a student at Lord Selkirk, right?
Yes.
And so you went from working in a team setting last year to a soloist this year. What's that transition like? What's the difference between the two for those who haven't competed in a poetry competition before?
Well, with the team setting, you work a lot more with like the other people on your team. We had to like make sure that we weren't reciting the same poems as one another, you know, for variety. And we worked a lot more closely with our teacher, Mr. Kane, last year, just because it was in person and like we had the opportunity to. And then this year it was like, if you want to do it, go for it. I'm just sending it in so that you can be seen. And then once I was selected as a finalist, then we worked more closely together. But yeah, it's a super different dynamic just because you're doing it solo.
Can you talk a little bit more about the process of working through a poem and the art of actually delivering that poem? Because we just heard Al mention, you know, that process, working through it and really clearly articulating the message, but conveying your own personal kind of sentiment as well. And you were just talking about, you know, delivering it the first time, but then really working on the poem. What's that like for you?
For me personally, I think it's super important to have like an actual connection to the poem. Like it's not going to be as impactful if you don't relate to anything in it. And like my process personally is like I'll go onto the website, find the poem, and like read through it a few times, figure out if I think I can make a connection to it, because it's almost never immediate for me. There's only like one poem that I felt like I have to do this one. So yeah, for me, it usually starts with like the memorization, because I feel like as I get to know the poem more, I create more of a connection with it as I go through, and then reciting it over and over out loud. You figure out how it flows and like where you can bring the most emotion out of it.
I mean, here at a classical music radio station, we'll play song, right? And song being there's a text and then a musical accompaniment, whether that's solo piano or an orchestra. But the main thing as a singer is really considering that text very, very carefully. And sometimes that text is in English and sometimes it's in another language and you have to translate. But in both cases, you really have to contemplate and work with the language. And just the other week, I was speaking with a great Canadian soprano by the name of Tracy Dahl. And she talked about how she's made a career performing this music, but she still returns to it and finds something fresh and something new in the lyrics that she's singing, in the poetry. And working with Nigan Sinclair, she really related this German lieder, which is, you know, written 200-300 years ago, to the present, to us here in Winnipeg. Al, can you tell us a little bit more about what it's like for you working through the process, reciting poetry, and you know, now what it means to be in this final once again?
Yeah, so a lot like what Tierney said, you have to like relate to a poem and like find a connection with it. And I'm lucky that I found like a pretty big connection with all of my poems that I have this year. So yeah, and then once you find that connection, it's really like repeating and working over, finding out which words that you really want to highlight and make important in that poem. And yeah, working with the people around you, maybe your friends, you can do it for them. And especially our drama teacher, like I worked a lot with Miss Francis on all my poems. And yeah, it's a lot about like just repeating and finding out what I want to do.
And just to really make sure the shout out happens, you're at East Kildonan Collegiate, right?
Yes.
All right. So just making sure we're giving them the nod, because, you know, it really is the teachers that so much encourage this process, right? And I mean, you were both speaking to the idea of reciting these things online, the Zoom finals, the teams working through these things, and of course the finals aren't happening as they typically would. All of this is going to be an online event. Tierney, what would it mean to you to be a winner in poetry and voice?
Oh God. I mean, like last year with the team regionals, like it doesn't go to this level, right? So I don't really have anything to compare it to for that. Like I've made it to provincial competitions for like piano playing and whatever. But I feel like it's so much different when it's like when you're speaking through your own voice to convey a message that you want to put out. And like for all of the poems that I chose for this year, they all felt super topical. just with current like global issues. So being able to be known for that, and like having I guess a little bit of a reputation for what you're doing, and for things that you're passionate about. Like I think that's what I care the most about.
And obviously that's translating to the audience in both of your cases. And so I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me here at Classic 107 today. And as we began this interview with Al and a recitation, Tierney, would you mind ending us off with a poem?
Yeah, of course.
What are we going to
So
hear?
this is Two Guns in the Sky for Daniel Harris by Raymond Antrobus. When Daniel Harris stepped out of his car, the policeman was waiting, gun raised. I use the past tense, so this is irrelevant in Daniel's language, which is sign. Sign has no future or past. It is a present language. You are never more present than when a gun is pointed at you. What language says this if not sign? But the police officer saw hands waving in the air, fired, and Daniel dropped. His hands, his chest bleeding out onto concrete. Meters from his home, I am in Brooklyn Coffee House in New York, reading this news on my phone, when a Black policewoman walks in, two guns on her hips. My friend next to me reading the comment section, Black Lives Matter. Now, what could we sign or say out loud when the last word that I learned in ASL was alive? Alive. Both thumbs pointed at your lower abdominal. Index fingers pointing up, like two guns in the sky.
Wow, Tierney, thank you so much for doing that. And again, congratulations to you both on being recognized for a phenomenal delivery, and just wishing you the best in the final that's upcoming, April 22nd. It's very exciting times, and you've both represented Manitoba so well. So thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks for having us.